Welcome to the Hardwonwisdom podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hardwonwisdom podcast. Today, my girl Michelle's getting ready to start another job in a few days.
Yes,
She
I
started
am.
over. And you know what happens when you start over? You have to prove yourself all over again. It's like people used to be so impressed with you, and now you got to impress them brand new. And that's hard. And I thought we should do a podcast, not just on that kind of starting over, but when you're going through change, because you may be just doing different responsibilities or doing different things with your life. And that can be a bit unsettling. So we do have some tips for that. And so we thought that might be a good place to start.
It's frustrating because you work so hard to build a name for yourself and your brand and prove your worth. And then you want to make a change. And it's like, how do you not feel like you're starting from scratch, losing all of the experience and credibility that you have? So it's just, I love that we're talking about this today, Fawn.
Yeah, but you remember when you were a kid and you'd have the first day of school? I mean, every school year you were doing that.
Yep.
And we were much more adaptable, weren't we? Because I think we were expecting it. It was a seasonal thing. Oh, I got to change. I got to get a new teacher. And now we are in such a change-driven environment that even if you're standing still, things are going to change. And there is that comfort zone that we long for that is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's kind of weird to even talk about a comfort zone anymore, isn't it? Because Does it exist?
Well, I think whenever you're standing still, you can get real comfortable. Then all of a sudden you're shocked whenever life starts passing you by. But I also think ego has a lot to do with it.
Go there.
Well, because, something changes. Like, let's go back to my world, right? So something is changing. I'm starting a new job. Now, I can look at it as, oh my goodness, I have all of this wisdom and now I get to learn new skills and experiences. Or I look at it as, well, crap, I've got to go show them that I can do this. And don't they know who I am? And did they not look at my LinkedIn profile or my resume? Like, am I really having to go back and do this? So I think it has a lot to do with that. Ego can be a bad thing, right? It can be your enemy if you're not careful.
It can be your friend, and it can drive you to do things that make you successful, but it definitely, in what you're saying, and also, this is a change you are accepting into your life. It's a good opportunity, and you're doing it. But sometimes you have to go through that same kind of change just because you get a new boss, and they don't come knowing everything that you've done in your life or how good you are, and they don't care. And you really have to prove yourself probably extra if you get a new boss, because they may be wanting to bring their own people in. And so you're kind of left over from prior days. So how do you make yourself comfortable in a situation like that?
Well, I think for me, I'm sitting back and I go, what of this can I control, right? If something is outside of my control, then I can ask myself that big question of, well, okay, so what do I want to happen at the end of this? And based on that, I'm going to choose how I react. So we can talk about a change with my job, right? That was a choice I made. How do I want to show up? Well, I want to be respected. I want to be able to have influence. So I need to come with confidence. I need to come listening. I need to ask really good questions. I need to be in service to my team and build trust. And if I'm doing those things, then the outcome in managing through that change is going to be much easier for me. In an example like that.
Yeah, and that's really very similar to any kinds of changes within your office. I remember one time I was feeling really vulnerable and insecure at a change that I had taken on because I used to be a reporter. I talk about that all the time. And I went from covering general assignment / investigative stuff to covering the legislature. And that is a scary thing because when you show up at the legislature, you got the first week, which is really predictable, the pomp and circumstance and the opening of the session, and then the state of the state with the governor. And then the second week, all hell breaks loose. And there will be all these committee meetings at the same time. Like you'll have 10 committee meetings in one day. And as a reporter, you can't be in every place at the same time. Yet at that time, I was with the Rocky Mountain News, which is a newspaper that is no longer in existence, but it was a good one then. And so I had to beat the Denver Post, the Colorado Gazette-Telegraph, the Associated Press, UPI. It was like all of these different outlets, even the papers from Pueblo and other parts of the state were there. And so it was important that I knew where I needed to be. And I landed like an alien on a different planet. It's like, it's like that line, you're sucking water out of a fire hydrant, because it was all starting immediately. And it was terrifying because I had 100 opportunities every week to get my butt kicked. And if you get your butt kicked, it's humiliating. And then you can also get in trouble. And I survived the first week. And I remember it was Sunday night and I was getting my clothes ready for the next day. And I was just dreading going back to work because this is so out of my wheelhouse. But it occurred to me that 1 week in the future, it was going to be a little bit easier getting ready. And then the next week, it was going to be a little easier than that. And then the next and the next. And I always think about that when I'm going through a big change, because it just gets easier and easier until then you're bored with it, right? And you have to shake it up and do something completely different. So when you are having to prove yourself and do something that makes you uncomfortable, just kind of lean into it, understanding that discomfort is at least interesting. And you're going to master it and you're going to get better at it week by week by week. And then you'll get bored with it and then shake it up again.
Yeah. Good story. I mean, it reminds me of a time. So I'd been in a department for a very long time and was successful there. And then they hire new leadership, right? So the leadership, of course, comes in and there's different types of leaders that join. And some of them like to completely, drop a bomb in the middle and do whatever they want. Some want to ease into it and figure it out. This was a situation where they wanted to just explode everything. And the immediate reaction is to go on the defensive, right? Maintain my station, maintain my position. I have more tenure and I have a lot of influence and I can probably win this battle. But what I realized very quickly is, I really wasn't going to win. What I needed to do is to step back and go, what is it I'm learning from this person? Because they had an incredible experience that I didn't have. And by me just showing respect that this is their position, this is their department, they have more responsibility and accountability than I did. What do they want to do and what can I learn from them? And it ended up being a fantastic relationship, but I had to get out of my own way and not dig my heels in as hard as I was and trust that I'm going to gain wisdom and I'm going to be better for it. And not look at it as I have to defend myself and my position. It was and reinvent or maintain respect. It was a matter of I'm only going to grow through this. And I think that's another reminder. I mean, you said it a second ago, Fawn, just you've got to lean into it and trust that every week it gets a little bit easier. While it's getting easier, you're also learning a lot more along the way as well.
That's a story that really makes me love you because it's very mature. of you. And I believe that it's hard sometimes when we are feeling insecure to take that kind of a mature look at it, because you really have to consciously step out of it. It's threatening when change is imposed on you. It's also threatening when you are having to sell yourself again. Because you know, I don't know if young people expect this or not. I am a little older than some people, but I'm also much younger than others. But there was always this idea that sooner or later in your career, you were going to get there. Like there was a place, right? And that when you get there,
joke's on you, right?
Right. It's yeah, right. Joke's on me. No, you'd get there and then things were going to get easier. People were going to be really nice to you because you worked so hard. You had all that experience. They'd love you so much because you were the tenured person. You had all this wisdom to impart. You had done it, right? And then the more I lived, the more I discovered that there is no there. Now, especially being self-employed, you know, that target's always moving. But, you know, just with my last book coming back, that's really the way we live now. There is no there. That when you think you've nailed it, everything's going to get changed again, and you're going to have to prove yourself again. And you will be proving yourself until the day you die. I don't know, maybe when you retire, if you won't have to prove yourself, but I just kind of think this is the way we all are. We're constantly being tested to see how strong and resilient we are. And particularly in a work environment, you're not going to get there. And as much as you think you might be able to bide your time, those are the people that are the most endangered.
Yes.
Anywhere. And I see them all the time. I have friends that say this, I just need to bide my time for 5 more years. And this is not a world that allows that, because 5 years in today's time is like 30 years in the kind of time when we were getting out of school. You can't think that you're going to skate for 5 years in this environment. That's not going to work. You have to every day go in there and like you said, you have to deliver. And it can be insulting when others don't respect what you've done. You know, particularly if you're older, that's a sensitive thing, because sometimes the critics or the people you have to please are much younger and may not have the same work ethic that you respect. And you still have to kiss their asses, people. I'm just telling you like it is, because the people and the players are constantly changing. And not only do you have to impress them with what you know now, but you really have to impress them with what you know that's going to be valuable 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. They don't care what you did yesterday. Nobody cares what you did. So the better you get at adapting and expecting a life of change and starting over, then the faster you're going to see yourself moving up, because then you become valuable. You will take steps to make yourself relevant. You'll take steps to, you know, actively learn things that make you credible on the coming technology. And that's not that hard to do. But it's the people who just say, yeah, I think I'll sit that out, that get beat. And, you know, I mean, there's certain things that I could do better on that I've paid for. I mean, Michelle, you know, I hate social media, except I like Facebook and posting pictures of my kayak. But, you know, there's always something that we have to learn and be agile at.
How about, let's talk a little bit about how you stay relevant. How do you build in resilience into your new normal? Because I think there was a time when you could step back and coast until that retirement, right? I mean, but to your point, technology, life, everything is moving at a pace now that it wasn't that back then. So things you can do to be relevant. Well, for me, I mean, a couple of the things, I know you have a long list, and this is so good in your book coming back. I'll give that a plug. But I mean, like today, like I am starting this new job. Perfect time. I'm starting this new job, and there are some responsibilities that I have not done before. So I start next week, I have called 3 people this week and had conversations that are experts in it and what I will be doing. And I'm like, all right, here's what I know. Here's what I'm walking into. Here's what I bring to the table. What advice would you give me? What are typical watch outs? What do I need to be thinking about that what do I not know that I don't know? Right. And I have pages of fantastic advice from people. I'm not going to go ask my broke uncle for financial advice. I'm going to go ask the people who are really good at it. And people are gracious with your time. So letting yourself get out of your own way and not be afraid to raise your hand and ask for help and say, I don't know how to do this. I know how to do these other things, but I don't know how to do this. What advice would you give me? That would be one thing that works for me time after time after time. But what about you? What's something that you would say?
You have to have this insatiable curiosity. So that means you're reading the Harvard Business Review, you're reading the Wall Street Journal and Inc. and Wired and things like that. And that doesn't mean you're just diving in and just getting yourself bored to death with things you don't care about. You at least want to scan the headlines. And then if something grabs you, it gives you something to talk about that makes you current. And there's so much online learning that makes you so valuable. And most of it is free. So YouTube, if it's something small, right? We go to YouTube if we need to fix our toilet or if we have some sort of a simple thing that we need to solve. But Coursera, edX, Linda, they got all kinds of places where you can get these online courses for free. And these are courses in leadership and AI and whatever is current that you can take from places like Harvard and Yale and MIT and the University of Florida if you really want good education. But there are these MOOCs, that's what they're called. And they've got this great online learning. And the beauty of that is that when I take them, I had to understand I didn't need to get A's on the tests, right? I was doing that first class in leadership, I was doing a class in innovation from MIT. And I was really forcing myself to really focus on this test, on this class. And all of a sudden it's like, Germer, you have a master's degree. You're not trying to get another degree. It doesn't matter if you barely pass this test. So the pressure was off. I just go to these things for information. And sometimes I don't even finish it. But I do put them on my resume because it makes me seem very smart. So if you want to make yourself really relevant, pick your industry. So, you're in CX, right? So that's
this is tech, but tech customer experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you wanted to figure out what you need to do, you'd say trends in customer experience, right? You'd Google that, and then you'd find something that would list all the coming trends. And then you just start studying those things because companies don't care if you're the best person for the job today. Don't tell them that. They want to know you're the best person down the runway in 3 and 5 years from now, and that you're actively learning so that you've got that to offer. And I realize that some of this is intimidating, right? I mean, I would rather go kayaking than doing some of this stuff. And, but that's the way it is, right? We have to be learning. And sometimes if you're a constant learner like that, Michelle, I guess we're probably not going to use that one podcast, but let's just say it. Michelle went through a layoff and then had a mega job in her lap in like 15 minutes. I'm not kidding. Who does this except our girl, Michelle? And because she's so in demand, she's so good at what she does. And knowing that, didn't that give you more security, knowing that you know what you're talking about and that you are agile and current so that you knew you would find something?
No, absolutely. And kind of to the point I had earlier, what do you want to spend your energy on? Do you want to spend your energy on what happened in the past that you don't control, or are you going to spend your energy on what you want? And that for me, that's a very easy decision. And, now, especially you watch all these tech layoffs and you see things in the way people are handling it. And I just see people just spiraling in the crappy situation, and they're not going to get anywhere that way. They're just going to keep spiraling. So it's just, if you're in that, get out of it. And you get out of it because you start focusing on what you want and taking advantage of the people that are in your experience and in your circle that can help, tell you, maybe share with you how they perceive you, where they see your strengths, who they know, but get really crisp on what you're going to put your energy into.
I'm curious of the people that you worked with who also were laid off, because this was certainly, they didn't come and say, oh, we're coming after Michelle. No, this was a bigger deal than that. What are you seeing in terms of how people are rebounding from that and coping with it?
Lots of questioning self-worth. Their whole sense of self was tied up into their job and their title, and now they are questioning everything. So it is I'm watching people deal with an insurmountable level of grief.
Wow.
In fact, I was talking to someone the other day. So this is someone I know that had been impacted by layoffs. And they reached out to me. And as I just, my deal was, before I go into problem solve mode, tell me what you're doing, tell me how you're doing. And immediately I heard, like, God, I've applied for all these jobs, and just panic, just sheer panic, and just throwing everything. And I'm like, okay, well, talk to me a little bit. Like, what are you really good at? What were you doing? And I'm looking at I'm looking at his resume, and I'm like, you realize that nothing you just said that you're really good at, what you want to do, you realize that A, the stuff you just applied for are not bad. B, your resume doesn't even hardly mention it. Like, I would have never gathered that that's what you're doing based on your resume. What do you actually want? And it was just fascinating to me, because just sitting back and listening and asking questions, I'm like, you're not even looking in the right area. Like, and he was laughing by the end of it. He's like, Michelle, my whole perspective has just changed. And suddenly he wasn't feeling like this helpless, desperate victim. He's like, man, he's really good at RPA. I'm really good at RPA. I build teams, and I can go drive these efficiencies and optimize performance. I can do all these things. And I'm like, okay, so what companies could benefit from that? And the answer to that is really what RPA is just to cut to this, is it's like automating manual processes. Okay, you tell me one company that's not interested in that.
Right.
Okay, so let's start there. And then here's what you do for them. You can either consult on how to do it, or you can build it within a company. Would you prefer to be in a company? So it was just a matter of unpacking all this stuff. And he's like, oh my God, you've just given me 5 different companies I would like to go work for. I wasn't even thinking about them.
So the moral to the story for everybody else from that is?
Pull back, ask yourself what you want to do. Don't react out of desperation. Stop, take a breath. Where do I want this to lead me? What do I enjoy doing? What am I really good at? And how can this skill I have actually help a company meet their goals, instead of looking at how is that company going to help me make my payment this next week? It's a matter of, I have a valuable skill that is going to benefit a company, and I need to be telling them that story. So flipping the script, knowing what you're good at, targeting the jobs and roles that you want to do. That's your takeaway. Don't react, period. It gets you nowhere good for any kind of long-term happiness and success.
And when they had these layoffs, some of the severance packages were not the most generous you've ever seen, right?
Yeah, I've been on, that was the first one I'd ever been on a receiving end. I've been on the one delivering the bad news a lot. And yeah, I'm talking to people at so many companies right now that have been impacted. There's some pretty sad severance packages going out.
So of the people who were laid off, how many of them are actually desperate because they had not saved? And
I think I don't think it's as, I don't know. I don't think it's as high, because when I'm talking to people and I'm asking these questions, what I realize is things aren't as desperate as they're acting right now. They're worried about 6 months from now or 9 months from now, that's the worst case scenario, not what's affecting me in this moment. And so that's where I think they have to sort of get grounded on what's really at risk and at stake right now and in the short term versus worst case scenario down the road.
It's hard when you're being forced to change to get away from the catastrophic thinking.
Absolutely.
And the catastrophe rarely happens. It does happen sometimes, but rarely. And so we should we've talked about doing a whole show on catastrophic thinking, Kimberly, because some people I've been somebody who used to do that many years ago. I would go to the worst case scenario, but then I started to live a little longer and see how seldom that ever played out. And the reason I was asking about the number of people who were in dire straits is that I always look for an excuse to remind people to stop going into debt. You may be there. Don't make the debt worse than you have to, because that's what takes away your options. And that's what can scare you. But the truth is, to those of you who are listening to this, the odds of you eating out of garbage pail are pretty much zero.
Slim to none.
So when things get shaken up, you need to embrace the opportunity, like she said, because there's going to be more learning. And if we are here at Earth School, we're here to learn. So what are you going to learn in this chapter? And figure that out.
Or what meaning do you want to put on it, right? What meaning do you want to put on this experience?
Yeah. What is your takeaway going to be? Because you have to, in order to survive in a corporate environment or any workplace, you have to be delivering for them. But the thing you get in exchange is the growth for you. Yep. So it's, time to take stock and see what you're going to get for that. And the other thing is, as you start this process, the first thing you've got to do is make a conscious decision to be confident. And that can be very hard to do because you got a kick in the gut. And you have to remember, it's not just you. Right now, tens and tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs, right? And that comes and goes. We've seen that happen so many times. And then you go through something like 2 years ago when everybody was quitting and you could get any job you wanted. So times change. You are smart enough to figure this out. The things that made you successful in the past will make you successful in the future. And I'm not saying about the little wins and stories that you've got about your achievements, which I know are real important to you, but people don't care about that as much. But your resilience, your courage, your bravery, your ingenuity, your ability to accept and adapt, all of these things come to play on whether you're going to be a winner or not. And in a change environment, my core coping strategies: accept, cope, adapt. Just dive into it, figure it out, and decide that you're going to be a winner. Whether this change is something that you have chosen or something that has just landed on you. You choose how you react, and your confidence is so critical.
I think you just nailed the end.
The end?
Yeah, I think you wrapped us nicely with that.
I know, but Michelle, I've got 6 more points on my list.
Well, I have more. We can keep going. I'm just saying that was just a good wrapper.
Well, we may come back for that. I'll just be quick. So set goals.
Well, I have one. Let me add one, because you were just sharing that. So I have one. This is to build resilience too. This is really where it's important that I'm going to call it optimize your own performance, making sure that you are in peak condition, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Oh my God, that's great.
Sleeping, what you're eating, how you're taking care of yourself, movement, some things to really invest and make sure you're at your best, because this is a real easy time to go down a slippery slope of depression and just abusing your body and your mind. And you cannot do that. You have got to commit to keeping your performance and yourself at its best.
Boy, that is big. And I actually think it starts with how you take care of yourself physically, because then the mental comes right behind it. And Michelle knows I'm someone that's a big believer in positive thinking and affirmations. And I just read her my affirmations for something today. So I actively do that. But the number one thing that keeps me in the game is that I am physically active. And so the last thing you need to do, whether you are getting dumped on at work and having to adapt to stuff, or if you're choosing a change, the last thing you want to do is sit on the couch and get on Facebook and start feeling sorry for yourself. Get moving. Movement is like a magic elixir, and your health is, it helps you to sleep, and that gives you the space to focus. And it's like everything starts and ends, I believe, in physical fitness.
Yes. Preach, Fawn. Preach.
Okay, set goals. So know on Monday what you want to achieve this week. And on Friday, you look at that list and say, what did I not get done that I have to do next week? So you always know what's coming and that you're on a path towards something, whether you're working or not. Yes, ma'am? I
was going to say, let's be clear. Goals does not equal tasks. It's like, I call it what you're just described as a practice I also do. What are your 3 priorities for the week? Not just boxes I need to check. Like, because I think sometimes people, 3 things I need to do this week. Like, what are the big priorities and big things I want to accomplish? Not, you're talking like big achievements for the week. Intentions and goals, right?
That's an interesting point for us to spar on a little bit, because I can see what you're saying, but I think there is no problem with making that your goals of tasks, because as a self-employed person who was undisciplined, I had to learn that I was responsible for my business, and that meant I had to have a really good task list for the week. So maybe I've misidentified it, but if my goal is to do this task, it's a goal. And so, but I see what you're saying about priorities. I also believe that if you're trying to get things done, it's tasks. So whatever, people, just know what you're going to do. And then be patient. This is so hard because I have no patience. Michelle knows this. It's not, all my friends are always doing yoga and stuff. And it's like, I'm waiting for a class that's called Yoga for Impatient People. And they all say, it's not the point. It's like, the point is, who wants to be patient? But situations don't resolve themselves immediately. Not, well, they do if you're Michelle, but everybody else, not quite like that. And so if this means you're going to have a certain amount of time where you're uncomfortable, lean into that too, because you are still blessed with my mantra, which I've shared many times, which is every shitstorm ends. So it's going to get good again, right? It's going to get good. Don't worry. Better days are coming. So be patient for that.
My mom's advice was always like, just get up and take a step forward. Like, there is no other option. Like, just get up and move forward.
Just
and if you don't
thing.
Even know where you're going, sometimes that's just enough. It's kind of like Catherine Switzer, right? Just put on your shoes.
Yes.
Just get up to get ready to make progress, period.
And I hear that voice inside of me always like, just do the next thing. So when you don't know what to do, you can figure out one thing you can do that moves you forward a little bit. And that, remember, just do the next thing, because one step and then another and then another gets you there. Maybe not as fast as you want to go, but you're going to get there sooner or later. And then network, shamelessly network. Don't be embarrassed because you're struggling. What good is a network if when you're struggling, you can't use it? Your network is going to get you a lot more action than anything you do. So the first thing you have to do is say, I need help. This is what I need. Can you call and do the following things? Don't be vague about it.
Yeah.
Because people are so into themselves, they forget that they said they'd help you or do something, and they don't know what they're doing. So when you have a network, say, I'm looking at this. Here's somebody that's a mutual connection. Can you please call this person tomorrow and ask them if they will do a 15-minute Zoom with me? So use your network, put them to work, and don't worry about people knowing that you're struggling. A lot of people are struggling. Everybody has struggled in their life, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
You get through
I was
it.
going to add on to that one. Whenever you ask and agree with everything you said, but always offer to help them back. Again, sometimes you think that you're in a tough spot, so you're just needing to receive, but you have a whole toolkit of gifts and talents that you can offer them. In fact, I shared earlier, that I called some people who are experts in some of the job I'm going to be doing. And at the end of me getting some great advice, I'm like, well, okay, how can I help support you right now? And one of them had an immediate, like, oh my gosh, can you help me with it? They didn't walk in there ready to ask that. They're like, I'm dealing with this right now. What advice do you have? The second one, she stopped and she's like, you're kind of throwing me for something. But then she asked for, she needed help like building her personal brand. And she goes, do you have any advice on how to do that? And so it was a matter of, then we spent 10 minutes of me gifting back to her insights, information, things to experiment with. So I think just that way, sometimes you don't feel like you're taking, and it helps you to, again, build your confidence and show up in a place of service as well.
No, I like that. I don't think I've done that very much because I do so much when people ask me. So I'm not really in that mode to think, oh, I need to give them something right now. But I think that's a really good idea. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. Okay, now stay positive, people. That's the one thing that's going to keep you through this, because you may be experiencing a lot of negativity, and it will be hard to stay positive. That's when affirmations step in. You tell yourself, this is a temporary problem. I'm getting through this. I'm smart enough to figure this out. Everything is A-okay. And if you need more help writing affirmations, write me and I'll help you with whatever it is.
Well, and in a time when you feel like the world is outside of your control, your attitude, you have 100%.
Yeah.
So it gives you, again, another way to build your confidence is because you have control over this.
Yeah. And like I said, and even if this change is a really good change, a promotion, and it's just really hard, just stay positive. It's going to get easier, and just know that your mindset is really, really important. Okay, I got here, keep learning. We've talked about that. Be adaptable. We talked about that. And then the last thing is work hard. Now that may seem obvious, but that is the most important thing of all. Whether you are employed or unemployed, your ability to hyper-perform right now is what's going to carry you up over the hump, because that makes a statement about who you are. It says you're in the game, you're delivering. And also, if you are stagnant and have surrendered to your troubles, you're not getting anything done that's going to solve the problem. And so right now, your full-time job is keeping the motion going forward so you get through these uneasy times to greater success. My thoughts. Do you have any others to add?
That covered everything on my list.
So remember, every shitstorm ends. You're smart enough to figure this out. You're not going to be eating out of a garbage can. If you're doing something different that's making you crazy, that's okay, because you're going to get to the point where it is so easy for you, it's going to bore you to death. Life is a matter of constant change right now. And you're smart enough to figure this out. You're agile. The people who win are the people who lean into it. The people who lose are the ones who think they're going to skate. You've got it in you. Be positive, stay focused, and then write us so that we know what happened. You can write us. Our website is hardwonwisdom.com, and you can write us at info@hardwonwisdom.com. And Michelle, what you got that you want people to remember today? You've got your courses, and you want to tell a little about that?
Yep. I'm going to start my next small group cohort. It's going to be April the 3rd. And small group of women building very tight relationship and really focusing on a lot of the things we talk about on this podcast, right? Mindset, goals, self-love, progress, fulfillment, and really sharing just a full plan in order to help move you closer to where you want to be. So if you're interested in that, you can email me at michelle@michellebrigman.com.
And I've got a course coming up on toxic workplaces and surviving those, which I think I started it years ago out of experience, but I've done a lot of research on this, and this will guide you whether you work with jerks or have a boss hole. And if these are tough times, here's how to get through that. So we've got that. And I've got, well, of course, if you know of any good keynotes for me, I want to hear about that. So just visit me at fawngermer.com. Love hearing from everybody. You can write me at fawn@fawngermer.com. And with that, we'll see you all next week.
Yes, we will. Have an awesome week.
See you next week.
Thank you for joining the Hard Won Wisdom podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.